Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special World Trenchless Day edition of the Trenchless Technology webinar series. My name is Mike Kezdi, and I'm a managing editor for Trenchless Technology and Trenchless Technology Canada magazines. And I'm excited to be moderating the World Trenchless Day Municipal Roundtable webinar, Finding Success with Trenchless Technologies. Stick around until the end, because following this roundtable, I'll be announcing the 2021 Trenchless Technology Project of the Year Award winners. We're going to take a quick poll, so please submit your answer and then click the blue Return to Presentation button. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Applied Felts, Q's, IPEX, MaxLiner, the NASTT 2022 NODIG Show, and Underground Magnetics. And given that most of our audience are in the system owner group, I'd like to do a quick plug for the NASTT NODIG Show Municipal and Public Utility Scholarships. The NASTT NODIG Show Municipal and Public Utility Scholarship is given to employees of North American municipalities, government agencies, and utility owners who have limited or no training funds, with a full conference and exhibition registration to the NASTT 2022 NODIG Show in Minneapolis. Registration, the full registration includes access to all the exhibits, technical paper sessions, and all you have to do is get yourself to Minneapolis. And select applicants will be eligible to receive overnight accommodations. Deadline to register is November 1st. You can find more information at nastt.org under the NODIG Show tab. As a disclaimer, any views or opinions presented in today's webinar are solely those of the presenters and do not necessarily represent those of Benjamin Media Inc., the publisher of Trenchless Technology magazine, nor does Benjamin Media Inc. endorse any products or methods presented. For today's webinar, we've assembled a panel of representatives from municipalities to discuss the successes and challenges they have had using Trenchless Technologies. Taking part in the discussion today are Ashley Rammeloo, Division Manager, Sewer Engineering for London, Ontario; Eric Schadler, Engineering Manager, Sewer Engineering, Wastewater Treatment and Sewer Operations for Vancouver, Washington; Thomas Wynne, First Associate Commissioner, New York City Department of Design and Construction in New York City; and Mike Zantingh, Senior Project Manager of Public Works for Hamilton, Ontario. This will be a live roundtable webinar. We have some prepared questions to get today's conversation going, and we'll take questions from the audience as well. So we encourage you to participate by typing your question into the designated panel in the left-hand portion of the screen. All right, well, I think that we're ready to go here. So Eric, I'll start with you first. Can you describe your sewer and water system? Give us an update, I guess, on its condition and age, type of pipe you have, and what are some of the unique challenges your system presents in terms of maintenance and upgrades?
Sure. Thank you, Mike. First of all, I just want to reiterate that we are Vancouver, Washington by Portland, Oregon, and not Vancouver, Canada. So we're the original Vancouver. Sometimes knowing the location helps to know what issues we might have. So we currently have about 780 miles of sewer. There's 740 of that is gravity, and we have about 40 miles of pressure sewer. And we have about 60,000 utility customers, which serve a population of about 240,000. And with that, we have approximately 43 pump stations. Kind of depends on your definition of a pump station, some small ones, some large ones. As far as age goes, our first pipes were actually constructed in 1890, and there are some pretty old ones still in use and existence. We have a pretty big mix of pipes from PVC, concrete, ductile iron, clay, C900, HDPE, primarily PVC, and a lot of older clay pipes. So I'd have to say our biggest challenge, because we are in the Pacific Northwest and quite, wet tree area, is root intrusion is a huge problem with us. We also have, the normal, what I would call most cities have is grease, fog type issues. And current problem we're dealing with a lot of our pipes, especially concrete ones, is degradation of the pipes due to H2S and aging and other conditions. So that is probably our main issues we are dealing with. And I'll just kind of add, as far as trenchless goes, we probably 8 years ago or so really didn't do any trenchless work almost at all. So this is a brand new program for us in the last few years. Big learning curve. We didn't have much experience in that, and it's actually come a long way. So in future questions, I'll kind of talk more about how we overcame that and what we've learned on the way.
Thanks, Eric. Ashley, I'll turn to you now. Can you kind of give us the same description of London's systems, type of pipe, and some of your unique challenges?
Sure. So our sewer system dates back to 1852. We still have some of those egg-shaped pipes in the ground, but most of them have been lined at this point. Older areas of the city were built with combined sewers, so we're still undertaking a aggressive program to separate those in order to reduce discharges to the river, of course. We have about 2,800 kilometers of sanitary, 1,400 kilometers of storm sewer pipe. On the water side, we're a little bit unique in that we are fed by two Great Lakes. So we draw water from Lake Huron and Lake Erie, and most of the city is fed via gravity from those two large reservoirs. And so we have more than 1,600 kilometers of water mains, 5 reservoirs, and 9 pumping stations. So some of the challenges, of course, like I mentioned, are the combined sewers, but also the age of the system. When we have some that dates back to 1852, the city was also annexed and grew over a number of years. So we have areas of the city with varying age and condition, and sometimes we have limited knowledge of what was built there. So we're heavily reliant on those inspection programs and modeling to be able to get a sense for how it was built, how well it's holding up, and when we might need to intervene.
Thanks, Ashley. Tom, how about you? Can you kind of describe New York City's sewer and water system, condition, age? Same question.
Sure, be happy to. So New York City is, as you know, an old city, right? We have approximately 7,000 miles of sewer, and some of it dating back 200 years. It's a variety of mixed materials. We've got clay, concrete, ductile iron. Most of our large culverts and interceptors are boxes. Some poured in place, some precast. And we're probably about, I'm going to say 70% combined. You know, we've got 500 miles of shoreline, so we do have a certain amount of MS4, but it's only a small segment. Most of these sewers predated the idea of separation, so about 70% combined. We service about 800,000 customers in terms of billing, but that accounts to about 8 million people. And on the water side, so we have an extensive reservoir system in upstate New York. It feeds the city through a system of tunnels, and we distribute that water throughout the city, just on every block. And our materials are cast iron, ductile, steel. We got a little bit of concrete pipe, but not a lot. And that system it started out as a wood system with small reservoirs in New York City, and then moved upstate as the city grew in density. As far as challenges, so New York City is a really dense urban environment. So you have both the surface expressions where you're dealing with traffic and people's houses being 30 feet from the trench and doing those types of social impacts, while at the same time dealing with a lot of the technical impacts. And there's a really dense underground in New York City. We call it the spaghetti bowl because there's electric, there's gas, there's steam, telecom, subway, water and sewer, And in large portions of New York City, it's all underground. And so not well thought out, not a lot of master planning. It's all kind of intertwined. So it really is a challenge for us with excavation.
Great, thanks. And last but not least, Mike, can you describe your system and some of the challenges that you face?
Yeah, thanks. So City of Hamilton, we manage about 3,100 kilometers of sewer and about 2,000 kilometers of water main. Much of our older city is combined, just like New York and London. We've been distributing and collecting water and sewage since about 1850. And some of that old infrastructure is still in use today. That I think probably one of the things that we do deal with, of course, is that combined system. So we have a number of combined sewer overflows in our system, and then the other unique thing that we deal with is the escarpment. So we have a number of drop structures to convey the sewage from the upper part of the city to the lower part of the city, as well as moving water from the lower part of the city up. And one of the things that's unique is that the majority of the city is serviced from one treatment plant. So, yeah.
Great, thanks. So we'll go back to you, Tom. We'll jump right into the Trenchless Technology, aspect of today's webinar. Where does Trenchless Technology fit into New York City's system? How long has New York City employed the use of trenchless methods, and in what ways?
So New York City's we've been doing trenchless for the better part of 4 decades. Now, primarily that was, CIPP lining, gunniting or shotcrete, and a little bit of trenchless excavation, microtunneling and some jacking. It has been both a boon for us because, it allows us to kind of deal with that spaghetti I was talking about. But there are special challenges in New York City, and so we've looked at more recently going into using additional methodologies, pipe bursting or jacking, HDD. But you have to kind of target where you do that in New York City. I know we had a utility company did some HDD gas mains back in the 70s or the 80s, and it took almost decades for them to realize that they had clipped some of the house services for private buildings, and slow failures kind of led them to say, okay, we now need to kind of go investigate all these house connections. So you have to kind of figure out where you can use your trenchless technology. We've been really big on the lining and the gunniting because we find it really helps to solve. It helps to extend the life of our pipes. Without a whole lot of surface footprint, which is very good for the communities here in New York City.
Great, thanks. And Eric, you mentioned earlier that trenchless technology is something that's relatively new to the city of Vancouver. Can you expand on that? Where you've used it in the system, and in what ways?
Sure. I want to say before 8 years ago, we would have a random project here or there based on necessity, and basically a CIPP, and I think we had one tunneling project, and that's really been about it. In the last few years, we've kind of learned about asset management and now have a very proactive program based on asset management principles where we're lining our kind of red category pipes, and we've got a good budget set up aside, because before 8 years ago our budget was almost zero, and unless it was an emergency, we weren't able to do much. And I got to say, picking up on the asset management really helped to justify to our budget personnel, especially when we showed them, hey, these pipes are in a red category. They really approved it. We didn't have any issues trying to get the budget to do what we wanted to do. So now we're doing a variety of everything from CIPP. We do a lot of in-house, even manhole sealing, kind of related to O&M. We even picked up on root foaming, where we'd hire a contractor to do it, but now we have full-time personnel actually doing a root foaming program, which really helps maintain our pipes. And so that's kind of where we've grown lately in the last few years.
Thanks. Mike, I'll go to you next. How does Hamilton use Trenchless Technologies? How does it fit into the system, and how long has Hamilton used Trenchless?
Yeah, just sitting here thinking about our trenchless history, like we've actually been using like tunneling for a fairly long time. Some dating back into the 50s. So some of our larger, deeper interceptors had been tunneled into place. Some of our drop structures that crossed the escarpment also were tunneled. We have a couple of water mains that go from the lower part of the city up the escarpment to service the mount, what we call the mountain, and they were tunneled in place. And moving into more recent history, we've heavily used our CIPP in our sewer system. Back in about 2005, we became fairly aggressive at lining. In that 15 to 16 year period, we've lined close to or over 400 kilometers of of sewer, and we also have lined about 80 kilometers of water main using CIPP. And one of the unique things about lining our sewers with CIPP is we've noticed a major decline in maintenance work orders. So we looked at maintenance work orders through from about 98 to 2005, and we noticed that there was an increased number of them, and it was growing. And since we've been as aggressive as we have with our lining, we've seen a sharp decline in those maintenance records. So one of the advantages that we've seen in CIPP that we may have not have thought of when we first started the program.
Great. And Ashley, in terms of London, where does Trenchless Technology fit into your system, and how long has London employed the use of trenchless methods?
So we started using cement lining for water mains back in the 90s. That's also when we started, I believe, our CCTV program, though that might have actually started before that. We were doing some sewer CIPP lining back then, but probably around the same time that Hamilton did, about 15 years ago, we ramped that program up significantly. And it was also around that time that we started lining our trunk sewers. And so as the technology improved and as we were able to do larger and longer sections, that our lining program grew with that. At this point today, we use a whole number of them. We've evolved to the point where we have in-house lateral pipe bursting and lateral lining crews. We do a number of pilot projects such as manhole linings, and we do fully structural slip liners in our water system. So we've been very proactive in trying new products throughout, the last 30 years that we've been using the various trenchless technologies. Great.
And I guess sticking with you, Ashley, based on a little bit of my work with Trenchless Technology Canada, London has also used a bit of trenchless for new installation as well, like on the micro tunneling side as well, correct?
That's right. Yep. We've had some, so London sits at the forks of the Thames, so we have a lot of water crossings for our infrastructure. We also have 2 major rail lines that run through our city, and they don't like a lot of disruption. We're also called the Forest City. So our residents are very committed to that tree canopy and not disturbing it. So as a result, we have used a number of new installation techniques, especially for those water and rail crossings. So we've used microtunneling for water mains. A few years ago, we did the Berwick trunk sewer, which was a large, much larger machine. And right now we're in the design phase of replacing a siphon underneath the river, which will be a major trenchless undertaking as well.
Oh, great. I guess I could open that up to, everybody else as well. Everybody's kind of touched on using trenchless on the rehab side. Has anybody else had a lot of use of late on the new install side? Anybody can jump in.
So here in New York, I mean, we've done a significant amount of tunneling, for the third water tunnel's been a generational project going on for 50 years. They're bringing that tunnel from 100 miles upstate. And we're at a place now where it's active in 3 of the 5 boroughs. We're still working on connecting the last 2. So that was all tunneled. And we've used it on the sewer side as well. Not as significantly. It kind of depends on where we're working. Again, with the dense environment, it's not always great on a grid street, but certainly in the outer boroughs and in for connections upstate, we've used quite a bit of different tunneling techniques to kind of eliminate some of these surface open cut excavations. Plus, I mean, the water tunnel's like 600 to 800 feet deep in some places. Open cut just wouldn't be an option.
Eric or Mike?
Yeah, likewise in Hamilton, we're servicing our airport and employment growth development area right now with a new trunk sewer, and that's all being tunneled in place. So we completed the phase 1 section that included a new drop structure at the escarpment face, and then in total it will be approximately 15 kilometers of new tunneled sewer.
Yeah, we have not done really anything as far as new installation. It's almost rehab, replacement type work. Just one thing to add that we did also add is spot repair that we do in-house, which has significantly saved us a lot of money. So our O&M crews do their own trenchless spot repair.
Okay. I guess sticking with you, Eric, since you have the youngest trenchless program of the bunch, how did the city of Vancouver come up with a plan to incorporate the use of trenchless technologies into the system, and create, a program or budget for it? How did all that come about?
Sure. Like I mentioned, 8+ years ago, we barely did anything. One of the things that I'll just kind of give a plug that was eye-opening and really good was attending the No Dig show for myself, because before that, I really didn't know much about trenchless. So we've been sending folks to those type of trainings. Louisiana Tech has their Trenchless Technology municipal forums. So the start of it was kind of just getting people trained and learning about what was out there. And again, all those type of forums, webinars were a great help, just kind of learning what's there. So that was a help personally and for members. Another thing that helped get us started kind of with a program is, and this is what I would encourage municipalities. One is we like to do a lot of stuff in-house whenever possible, but I encourage you to hire consultants or contractors to help you out when you need to. So we hired Jacobs Engineering to do a interceptor study and assessment of all our major interceptors in the system. So they did a complete condition assessment. They worked up a kind of life expectancy and when we needed to rehab different pipes, when they are expected to fail. And that was kind of one of the major starts of our program, getting us started and getting it justified to budget so we could have the money to repair. And we started with the interceptors because, you know, if we have a failure there, that's where it's a lot more serious than on some of our other smaller lines. So again, asset management and just getting that whole program going was the biggest help for that. And from there, then we started developing our own in-house assessment. You know, we've always TV'd our pipes, but we've never did a complete asset management assessment. So now we have things in our, you know, green, yellow, red category, and we've got it programmed for basically 5 to 10 years out of how many lines are we going to replace.
Great, thanks. How about you, Mike? How did the city of Hamilton come about to incorporate Trenchless Technologies into its system and create a program and budget for yearly work?
Yeah, so in 2000, the Ontario government decided to amalgamate a number of municipalities in the province. And Hamilton was one of them. Since then, some have de-amalgamated, but so what it was is it used to be a two-tier government. We had the regional government, and then we had the local municipalities. And in 2000, all of those municipalities became Hamilton. So there was a bunch of little kind of boroughs or towns that were connected to Hamilton that all became Hamilton. And also at that time, a new group was formed, an asset management group, and they were tasked with managing all the right-of-way assets, so road, water, and sewer. And so when this team kind of formed, they started doing their condition assessments on sewers and looking at break data on water, and realized that there was a fairly large mountain to climb as far as backlog or assets that were in need of renewal. And that was kind of the birthplace of our Trenchless programs. And my former boss and their team, they obviously went to the no-dig shows and learned a lot about Trenchless Technologies and kind of got an understanding of what was out there in the industry, and started putting together some unique contracts. Like we do a multi-year contract for our sewer and water main lining. So it's an evaluated RFP, which provides municipality the ability to procure good contractors to do the work, and we've had really good success on both the water main and lining, our water main and sewer lining contracts. So that's really where kind of how we got into our Trenchless world, if you will, is we saw there was a fairly large backlog or need to renew, and we felt that Trenchless Technologies really fit that need well, and we were able to get a lot of work done in that time. I don't know if you could have replaced 400 kilometers of sewer in 15 years as efficiently as you could with CIPP. And same with on the water side. Like we've lined 80 kilometers of water main in approximately 15 years as well. And I really don't think you could have done that work or the same volume of work as we have done without Trenchless. So.
Great, thanks. And Tom, it might be a little bit more difficult to pinpoint exactly how New York City began using, trenchless technologies and how, it was incorporated into your maintenance and repair and program and budgeting. But maybe try to give us a little bit of a background, on that.
So definitely some of it is need-based. We've done open cut. We still do open cut, and it's still the primary way by which we replace and repair pipes. But there's a significant cost savings where trenchless technologies are applicable. And I think I've spoken a little bit about how the stakeholder impact is minimized by utilizing the trenchless. So I think there's always been this driver that's just purely it's what engineers do. It's financial. It's mitigation techniques. But I think it's important, and I know in New York City we've had a series of people who have been strong R&D advocates who help to kind of push along the conversation and be an ambassador for trenchless technologies. We've had a representative on the Louisiana Tech TTC for probably over 20 years, and we've advocated for the use with our colleagues, because engineers, like anybody else, there's a spectrum of people all across the board. Some are very aggressive and want to try new things, others very conservative and want to do with the tried and true. And I think you need somebody who's going to advocate for bringing in new technologies and expanding upon those technologies, and also being able to kind of step back and say, okay, that works here, but it doesn't work over there. And there are things in New York City where we've worked, like I can work in the outer boroughs with open cut and do a block of water main in under a week. I might do a block in downtown Manhattan in 8 months. And so there's a lot more of a driver to do trenchless technologies in some neighborhoods. And we kind of you have to have somebody who's willing to kind of push it along, because generally there's a lot of, I think, misunderstanding about how trenchless works, and you need somebody who can really, be the advocate for it.
Okay, thanks. And rounding things out, Ashley, how did London come about to incorporate trenchless technology into the maintenance and repair program?
Sure. I don't know about early days in, back in the 90s so much, but I know certainly over the last 20 years, as we've updated technologies and really expanded our programs, the key to getting that buy-in was, start with a smaller pilot project, show how this saves money, how it saved impact on the community. And from there, you get the buy-in to really expand those programs. So, we used to have a much, much smaller CIPP sewer lining program, and then it was quadrupled and has gone from and stayed at that level ever since, because we could show that it really contributed to keeping our overall costs down while closing that infrastructure gap on what we had on all those repairs. Like Mike was saying, we couldn't have replaced all those sewers open cut for the same price, and we wouldn't have been able to manage it with the budgets. And we were already looking at some significant increases, in the early 2000s in order to get our system to a sustainable level for funding and for the condition. So this really helped, those trenchless technologies really helped us close the gap. They've also, for new installation, really helped get, infrastructure into places that would have been otherwise difficult to access or really have a greater impact on the environment than we want. So we have a trunk sanitary sewer that goes through a valley that's an environmentally sensitive area, for instance, and much of that was put in trenchlessly because we could leave a much smaller footprint, but still have the infrastructure in a place such that it lowered the overall operating cost of the system because we didn't need pump stations and so on. So it's really about showing the value that it brings to both the bottom line, that dollar value, and to the impact to the community.
And I saw, as we were chatting, a question did come in from the audience, and this is open to anybody. Do you use any or much spray-on lining for water main rehab projects? Anybody can go?
So I'll jump in. Here in New York, we are investigating it, but we have not landed on a process that we're ready to pilot yet.
We haven't today. One of the challenges with lining water mains, of course, is there's quite a bit of cost up front, putting residents on bypass pits, and cleaning the existing main so you can prepare it for the whatever lining material you are. And that is quite a bit like that part of the cost of the construction is the same whether you're putting a structural liner in there or you're putting a spray-on liner. So that's one of the things that we're looking at again is to say is there any areas where we may be able to use spray-on applications? But that's one of the things that we've experienced in the past is that a lot of your cost in lining is in the bypass and cleaning and the pits that are required, the lining pits that are required. So that's one thing to consider with all that. So
yeah, I think that's fair to say that our experience is pretty similar. And so as a result, we do structural slip liners right now. Again, we're always open to looking at new technologies or older technologies that evolve and improve as well. But right now we're using the structural slip liners.
Yeah, I would say our water, on our water side, we're kind of where our sewer was 6 years ago, where they're just building their underground or their trenchless program. So that's something completely new to them. And they've only done a few trenchless projects, but they're starting to grow with it too.
Can anyone speak to perhaps an early hard lesson learned that might be shared with other municipalities who might be looking to move into trenchless technologies? This is another audience question here.
I'll emphasize the importance of good geotech, not only for new installation, though really important for new installation, but sometimes even for rehab. With sewer liners, if you're lining a really deep sewer, we discovered, the groundwater levels, it can actually have an impact on your curing and so on, and on the design. So that's been one where we are more proactive about getting at least, that basic information even for rehab programs.
and one of the things that Ashley mentioned earlier too is that it's okay to start small. It might be, you might select one or two lines that you want to line, and you put out a small contract to kind of assess the technology. The other thing that I would, talk towards, and it's something that we're still growing in, is the quality control, or quality assurance and quality control of the product itself, because all these, when it comes to CIPP, it's a in situ product. So you're essentially installing or, and in some cases, manufacture or injecting a pipe in the field, in the case of water main lining. So making sure that you understand the ways to test those materials, and also what test facilities are available in your area. I know there's a really good testing facility, Paragon, here in Ontario, and they do a really good job with it. Sorry, my camera just cut out. I'm not sure why, but anyways. So those are a couple of things that I would say towards that.
Yeah, I'll kind of add to what Michael said, is testing and quality control. That's probably been one of the biggest maybe learning hurdles, or just because we're a different division does a construction management in the city. So getting them up to speed, what's required, and even for us learning, because initially we didn't really have any quality control, quality assurance. It was all up on make sure the contractor was doing it right. And so we did have a couple failures, but that was, when we were doing the onesies, twosies. So now we're starting to understand it a little bit more better.
Yeah, I mentioned before, we did some, there was some horizontal directional drilling that was done in New York, and on grid streets with all the other underground piping, it becomes a challenge in making sure you're not damaging adjacent pipes or other companies' pipes, and so we've pivoted to where we think, HCD works great for subaqueous crossings, right, between some of the islands here in the city. But we've kind of stayed, we've learned that, that's the kind of, that and jacking, you got to be careful where you're doing it, especially, due to our urban environment, that it becomes difficult to ensure you're not damaging other pipes.
Great. And then another question here from the audience. What are some of the pain points with current trenchless methods that would make you consider an alternative method, or, I guess perhaps, what are some pain points between one particular method where you might, pick a different, trenchless method? I guess that's what they were getting at here. You can go ahead, Tom.
So I think you have to be careful in how you're presenting. We meet with a lot of vendors, and the nomenclature you use, I think, is important, because if you're talking to someone on the sewer side and they're talking about how their liner's fully structural, the sewer people are thinking, great, that's for overburden. But if you talk about a water main liner that's fully structural, well, the water main people are thinking, oh, great, so it'll resist pipe movement, and that's not always the case with different liners. So you need to be really careful as to the nomenclature you're using and what that might make you pivot to. I mean, for the most part, we're lining, or we're investigating lining larger trunk water mains, both for one of the reasons Mike mentioned, because we can take it out of service without doing a bypass because we have redundancy, but because we can also feel confident that we could slip line those. And we feel more comfortable with that process usually than, say, to install a CIPP liner. It certainly is challenging on the smaller pipes for us to use CIPP, and so that's why we tend to open cut more of them. So I think you got to just have a sense of, what your goal is, what you're trying to accomplish, and then, recognize and make sure that you and your vendor are talking about the exact same thing. You don't want to be saying, great, everything's fully structural, but what you mean is it's not pipe restraint structural, it's structural for overburden. And you just got to be clear when you're having these discussions.
One of our limits in deciding what to do, and we're kind of makes a decision for us, is we've always been limited what's available as far as the different types of trenchless work. So it's been great to see more contractors kind of embrace different stuff. Even like UV cured, we couldn't find any to do it a couple years ago, and now we have a couple that do UV cured in the area. So that's always been one of the, I guess, decision points, basically, our limitations.
One of the other ones that can be a limiting factor is the size of the pipe that you're lining, and then also the available material type that you might be able to line that sewer with. So just something to think about as well. And again, going back to Tom's point there too, is that the different types of assets, if you can get away with, like on the water side, that no bypass is required because of redundancy, there is an advantage to lining it as well. And then also potentially the location of that main, like Ashley said, like that actually is one of those limiting things on both sides. Like even with the replacement of it, some of these sewers and water main were built in environmentally sensitive areas, and it actually it limits you to what you can do on the lining side, but also on open cut as well. So.
Right, and this question that came in obviously is more for Eric and Tom. How has the pending infrastructure bill influenced decisions to move forward with or wait to release new rehab projects?
In all honesty, it hasn't influenced us or changed us at all. I mean, there's certain projects we're looking to do some major stuff, but really everything's right now based on need, or we have to do it, or something's close to failure. So that has not affected us at all.
Yeah, here in New York, I mean, sewer and water work is funded by bonds primarily, not tax dollars, and so we're not driven a lot by the federal government. We also, I'll be quite honest, we also find it challenging to accept federal dollars on the water sewer side. We can certainly make use of it when we're doing work on street work. But there's a lot of extra challenges associated, including like Buy American, where not all of our pipe, well, I shouldn't say that, but not all of our fittings, right, have an American or a domestic vendor. And so there are a lot of challenges with using federal funds, and so we try to be self-sufficient, and if there's federal funding available and it makes sense on a project, we'll use it.
Yeah, and just want to add one thing Tom made me think of is kind of unique for us is we try to stay away from bonding unless we're doing a major like plant upgrade or some kind of major work. We are actually, this year is pretty much debt free. So we're in a good financial situation, and that really helped us also to get the money for projects, the fact that we are debt free.
Great, thanks. Since some of you have already touched on this a little bit in your previous responses, but based on your experiences with Trenchless Technologies, how has it impacted your system physically and financially? Eric, you can go ahead and answer this one first.
Sure. One of the things we do track is claims, basically sewer overflows, if there's a failure, something like that. So our biggest impact is, we haven't had any major any failures, and so no impact to our customers, which is huge. In the sewer world, nobody sends you a letter saying, hey, I had sewer today. But if they don't have sewer, you do hear about it. So that's been huge. The other thing is, even though we're talking a lot about rehab, there's a lot of O&M type trenchless products work to do. And we track our claims where we've had backups due to grease and other things. And we are, just barely anything. Usually if something comes up, it's, quite unforeseen, or it's due to somebody dumping something down that they shouldn't have. So, that's our biggest impact is customer service and hardly any overflows.
Ashley, how about in the city of London? How has it impacted your system physically and financially?
So I'd say our overall condition rating, or our average condition rating, has certainly gone up because of the renewal of all those aging pipes that we wouldn't have necessarily been able to get to if we were on a traditional capital program. It also lets us get streets done where the sewer may be aging, but the rest of the infrastructure above it, the water and the roadway, is just fine. So we're able to really minimize that disruption for those property owners and reduce our costs. So we're not incurring all those restoration costs. Another place where we've seen it really help out and really help our property owners directly. So it helps them through their rate, but it also helps them in the actual cost output or cash output for them, because in our city, the property owner is responsible for their lateral all the way from their building to the sewer. So when they have a failure, we do subsidize it, but there is a cost for them to replace it. So we implemented pipe bursting and lining for where it's appropriate. And so that's kept the overall cost of the program down, which gets spread across all the subsidies. So that keeps the cost to the homeowners lower as well as on the rate side from these bigger projects.
Tom, we'll jump to you with the same question.
So certainly on the physical side from the system, we've found it to be, extremely helpful with our abilities to kind of manage more work than we might do with open cut. And specifically, we've done things like lining to deal with chlorides at the treatment plant due to I&I, right? Especially in where there's very high groundwater tables, or you're near the shoreline and you've got a lot of tidal influences. So, we've used it there to kind of manage some of our regulatory problems at the treatment plants. And that's been, I think, hugely beneficial to the system to be able to do that. And, financially, I think, the true benefit for the Trenchless technology is, especially in New York, where there's always more work to be done, that we're getting more bang for the buck, right? We're able to do more work by doing the Trenchless instead of open cut, which then makes the dollar stretch a little bit further, and we can then go into more communities and help to fix their systems. And so just on an overall basis, the cost savings, especially you've got cost savings of open cut versus lining, let's say, but you don't always necessarily see all the things that happen in the background, right? Like I could have millions of dollars in just traffic enforcement agents that I save by doing Trenchless technology. And so those are kind of costs that I think people don't often recognize that are now putting money back into the system to go back and replace pipes where we need to replace them.
We'll wrap it up with this question with you, Mike, and Hamilton.
Yeah, no, it's one of the biggest things that I think we've seen on the sewer side, and I mentioned earlier, is the operation and maintenance cost of the sewers themselves. It's much lower than it had been, and we saw that number climbing in the early 2000s, and we see a direct correlation of that reduced number and our lining program. And then on the water side, we've definitely been able to, I'd say, stabilize our break history. We haven't seen any major sharp increases in our break history, and I think we can contribute that to our lining program, where we're targeting areas where we've had high break history, and we've seen not so much a reduction, but a more steady state in that break history. Like we see on average about 300 breaks in the city of Hamilton, and that number has stayed constant over the last 15 years. And since we've done this lining program, we've done a couple break reduction studies with consultants over the years, and the last one that we did has shown that there has been a real benefit to where we've targeted our replacement and rehab programs, and it directly relates to a more steady state on break history. So
here's a question that came in from the audience. What is the desired design life when you're selecting a lining product? Is it 25, 50, 75, 100 plus years? Tom, why don't you go ahead and take this one first?
So in New York City, we've coalesced around the idea of a 50-year design life. I don't know that we've got always enough data to kind of prove that out, but we do believe that to be a realistic number, and so that's the number that we target.
And what about you, Ashley?
I'm going to have to apologize. I didn't quite hear the question because I was dealing with, we've had a lot of rain and I'm also dealing with flooding right now. So I will have to beg forgiveness on that.
No problem. When you're choosing a lining product for a lining project, what is the desired design life? 25, 50, 75, 100 plus years?
So we're generally assuming that we're getting at least 30 to 50 years out of our lining products, and that's what we're requiring. And for the sake of asset management, that's what we assume that we've increased its useful life by.
And what about you, Eric? What is Vancouver looking at?
We've been at 50 and even 75 years between those two, kind of depending on the product, but so yeah, 50 or 75.
And Mike, in Hamilton, what is are you kind of following the same pattern and you're in that 50-year range?
Yeah, and then on the sewer side, we're now extending that out to 80 years. I mean, there's been quite a bit of good research done on CIPP and the installation of that over the last 40 years. And they're seeing the product performing really well. And they're expecting the life of it to go to at least 80 years. So, yeah. And yeah, go for it, Ashley.
No, I should say, I think we're still being pretty conservative, but, the further out that we get, the longer that liners have been in the ground and we're seeing no degradation, we have been increasing that. That's always a discussion to have, with our asset management group who does the financial forecasting and asset and condition ratings and so on, between them and us. But certainly at 50 years at a minimum, and we about recognizing that it is likely more.
Yeah, I mean, we're much like London, but I mean, some of our first liners went in around 2000, and when we look back on them, they're performing really well. That's already close to 20 years of life in the ground, service life in the ground, and so that's getting over to close to half its service life if you're putting a 50-year life on it. But so it's neat to see, and as I said, on the sewer side, CIPP has a very long history. It dates back to the 70s, and those sewer pipes are as I said, there's a few articles floating around of people doing some testing on that, and they're seeing that the material properties are doing exceptionally well. So.
If I could just jump in, one thing I would say though is, we're all kind of honing in on CIPP, but if you're doing like a slip lining with a manufactured pipe, say something like a Hobus, we're often putting that down as we're anticipating getting a full 100 years out of that Hobus pipe.
Yeah, I would agree. Yes. Yeah. Good point.
We've got where, we slipped lined with, that HDP, and we would expect a full life expectancy out of that. As far as I'm concerned, it's a new pipe. So.
Okay. And do you, it's come up a little bit in some of the responses regarding having a yearly program set up or a multi-year program set up for pipe relining work. Can you kind of expand on what some of the benefits are to the municipality as well as the contractors who you're working with? Because I know from a lot of the conversations I've had with contractors, they really like it when a municipality puts out a multi-year program versus a 1Z, 2Z type output. Ashley, I guess you can start with that.
Sure. I mean, we certainly get economies of scale when we do it that way. We can have the contractor can come in and set up their program in a way that makes sense for them and their supply chain. And so as a result, we get better prices. With water main lining, we had been having trouble getting more qualified bids. We'd only have a couple bidders. And so we did consider breaking it into smaller contracts so that we could attract some of the smaller companies that couldn't quite do the big contracts that we were doing, but we wouldn't see those same economies of scale. And so we tend to lean towards the much bigger programs now.
Mike, can you weigh in on this?
Yeah, for sure. Like we've been doing multi-year contracts for for the last 15 years, really. And I think one of the biggest benefits that you see is the contractors who come in see a consistency in the work that we provide them. That's one of the things that we tried to do over those, 3 to 5 year contracts, is that the work we issue in the year one is a similar volume that you'd see in year 2, 3, and 4. So that, and I think in that you end up with some fairly competitive pricing from the contractor because they know that they'll be seeing that volume of work out of your municipality, and they'll come in. So that's what we've seen on the sewer side as well as the water side. So,
Eric or Tom, do you have any input on this?
I mean, in New York City, so we've had dedicated TV inspection, CIPP lining, and gunite contracts since the 80s. I mean, we've bought into it, and we know there's both the benefit to the contracting community of having it on an annual basis, and we've so accepted the cost benefit of doing it that way, and just the overall cost benefit of the Trenchless technology, that we baseline the budget and we put out an annual contract, or we'll put out an annual contract with a renewal. But there's a contract every year dedicated to Trenchless here in the city of New York. And like I said, we've been doing it for forever because we just believe in the benefits of it.
Yeah, we haven't done any multi-year contracts, but we are doing contracts every year. The one thing we have done is batched a couple projects together. So rather than, hey, this project goes out as a bid from A to B, we have A to B, and then we have another 2 or 3 other projects in the city going on at the same time. So that way when the contractor comes in, we can get a better price because he's doing more projects for us.
I'd also add that about 5 years ago, we were taking a look at it, and obviously we're kind of all in on the benefits, but we decided we could do more, and we actually doubled the Trenchless budget, and we've looked to baseline that. So 5 years ago we were doing whatever I think was $7 million worth of Trenchless on an annual basis, and we doubled that to 15 because we knew what the huge benefits would be.
What is some advice you'd offer municipalities exploring whether to use trenchless technologies for the first time? What kind of things should they know and consider, and how and where can they best get started? Tom, if you want to start off with that one.
Sure. I think you want to identify your goals, what you're trying to accomplish, and then be flexible as you start piloting your Trenchless technology. And there are going to be things that are going to work for you in your specific city, and there are going to be things that don't work for you. But don't worry about the failures, right? Take them as learning experiences, and be open to trying things so that you figure out what it is you want to do. As far as like the education, I think most of the panel members have said this, is attend Trenchless technology seminars, confer with local academic institutions, right? A lot of people, a lot of great colleges out there. They've got a lot of research and a lot of information on this. You can speak with them, and I would suggest even building peer groups. We We here in New York City have a peer group on the water side where 12 major municipal cities get together and one annually, and they have a conversation about what they're doing, how they're doing, sharing ideas. And then on the sewer side, there's a smaller group that's starting to set up. And again, you try to find peers that make sense to have these conversations, but those are all great ways of increasing your knowledge about trenchless.
What about you, Mike? What can you recommend? What kind of advice can you offer?
Yeah, I'll echo some of Tom's. That definitely in the industry shows are well worth it. It gives you a chance to talk to, consultants, vendors in person that you may not know. I know, like Hamilton's early journey. That's how they ended up. I think being so successful in this world is that going to industry shows and meeting people in the industry to help them along in their journey, and the other area too is definitely peer support and from other municipalities. Like I've known Ashley for a very long time, and we've had many good conversations at past shows, local shows here in Ontario. And there's definitely a real benefit. And then also just reaching out to, even myself or Ashley or Eric or Tom about, a project that they're thinking and getting our, asking questions and trying to help where we can help you along with that. And I've done that with other municipalities in the past that, we can give you some pointers and advice in that way. So.
Great. And Ashley, since Mike mentioned you, we'll jump right to you.
Sure. Yeah. Like they both said, the networking is really valuable, going to those training sessions, but also learning where the trenchless technologies may not work for you, because that will help keep you from having some of those failures. When, if you learn that information up front from the training or from contractors who will give you a straight answer on that's not a great candidate, it's going to save you some of those failures that might turn people in your community off of doing it. You want to look for those ones where it's going to really extend the life, and to run those initial programs in so that you can see the benefit and where it's working. Not all lining candidates are equal. And so balance out your needs there between other utilities, the condition of the pipe, how long you're going to get out of it. Again, going back to that training, that's where you're going to get all of these things, whether it's the online or local shows or, the big no dig show. You can learn so much, or going and talking to the vendors and just start asking the questions.
Eric, what kind of advice would you offer, say, looking to explore whether to start using trenchless technologies for the first time, and some of the things they need to consider?
First thing I'd say is, and I mentioned it before, is don't be afraid to hire a consultant. Again, we like to do a lot in-house, but I've found hiring consultants extremely valuable. And even talking to the different reps that sell different products, there's a lot of good products out there, and they can give a lot of good advice. And that's where the trade shows, no dig, all that is useful, because you can really talk to the folks to find out about products and what's out there. And even listening to the speakers there, where somebody talks about project they were working on or designed, and they might be a catalyst to, okay, I do want to hire this consultant, or look into this product. So again, that's probably my biggest recommendation, is especially starting out, if you don't have that in-house experience, consultant and training.
Great. And we've talked a lot about successes so far, using trenchless during this webinar. One of the other things that we often hear about is there are definitely some challenges to it, whether it be lack of qualified contractors or lack of certain products or methods in your particular area. Do any of you have any of those such challenges when working with Trenchless Technologies? Eric, I'll let you go first.
Sure. Contractors, rather than just getting the same one or two, that's always the biggest challenge. We're seeing more in our area, but that's always a concern. And the different types, like I mentioned, UV cured, we'd like to get more involved in that, but there hasn't been a lot of contractors. The other challenge is quality control, quality assurance, having our construction management staff know what they're doing. And the other one is always bypass pumping when we're working on our projects. That's always a real concern. Somebody knows how to do bypass, or if we do it in-house. So sometimes we do trade-offs there. But I'd say that's kind of our actually biggest thing is bypass pumping.
What about you, Tom? What are some of the challenges New York City faces?
So New York City is a prevailing wage city. It's driven by the local unions, and so whenever we meet with vendors, who want to, especially if they're out of state and they want to look to come to New York City, we always tell them that the best thing you can do is kind of reach out to the local unions, both for the operators and the laborers, and just make sure that you're in compliance with the requirements of New York City. And that can be challenging. It has definitely limited, in some ways, our vendor lists. I'm sure some of the other cities face the same problem, but we often end up with a very small pool because the union rules and the prevailing wage can be somewhat complicated, and you've really got to plan in advance for it. And so that's been a huge challenge for us in trying to bring in new vendors. And we're working through it, but we would love to have more vendors. It's just, I think, they have to get past that here in New York City, and it's often what slows down the process.
And Ashley, what are some of those challenges that London faces?
I think I mentioned it before, sometimes getting a larger number of qualified bidders for a type of technology. I think in early days, some of the challenges were, internal knowledge and just a lack of choice or lack, maybe sometimes knowledge in the industry in general about the appropriateness of various technologies. So we've certainly had a decrease in issues from that as we've gotten more mature in our trenchless programs, and both on the rehab and the new installation side. About in the early 2000s, there was a infamous tunneling machine got stuck underneath some rail lines because of improper machine type for the soils, and even though it was assured that no, this is fine, well, it wasn't. We did successfully redo the project a few years ago, but sometimes there's some growing pains like that. So having really good advice, if you don't have the expertise in-house, make sure, like was said, don't hesitate to bring in a consultant that does have that knowledge to make sure you're getting the right product for your situation the first time.
Great. Mike, do you have any input on this?
Yeah, so I guess probably one of the challenges I would say is in certain material or products, the lack of competition is definitely one of the ones that I'd say is a barrier. And also just availability of certain products in your area and competent contractors to do that work.
Right. And then this will be the last question. This being World Trenchless Day with the focus on promoting trenchless technologies and educating the world about the benefits of trenchless, how can we as an industry, reach out to, other municipalities, utilities who are unfamiliar with trenchless technologies and the benefits of trenchless? And so what can we do to help promote and further advance the industry? Mike, we'll go with you first.
Yeah, you know, roundtable discussions like this for sure is a really good way. Yeah, then also just you know, for like individuals like myself, is just getting out there and you know, writing papers of our experience in Hamilton, and showing the benefits of what we do in the industry, I think is real important. Sometimes that's a challenge because you obviously have limited time as you know, a professional to do such things. But I think those are the promotion of Trenchless in any given industry is really important, whether that's local shows or national shows. So,
What about you, Tom? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, definitely, you know, networking at events is you know, a really good practical way of reaching out to people. You know, the challenges obviously we've all been dealing with, you know, during the pandemic is it's just harder to have events. So I think, you know, that dynamic has changed a little bit. But you know, certainly these webcasts and things are a good way of doing it. I would suggest that it's helpful if industry members provide, you know, inexpensive seminars on techniques and strategies. We had a vendor who was looking to introduce carbon fiber wrapping into New York City, and they hosted an event, and it was extremely you know, it was not just interesting to us, but it was also we gained a lot of knowledge about the process, and it helped us, you know, as we were making evaluations about it. I think also, you know, if as industry you can assist with specs and QA/QC guidelines, I think that helps municipalities that don't really have those things set up. And then I guess, you know, the simplest answer is, you know, be honest about limitations, right? I think there's nothing more struggling than when a vendor comes in and says, "Yep, I'm going to solve every problem you have." You know, we're in this as owners because we're dedicated to working for public service, and you know, so we just want you to give us honest answers. Let us know what your limitations are, and we'll try to figure out what's the best way to incorporate your particular system into our system.
Eric, what is your input on this?
You know, we've mentioned trade shows, but usually when we think of trade shows, we think of no dig and the common, you know, trenchless type trade shows. And I think a good place to make an emphasis is, you know, just in our generic professional societies. You know, there's ASCE, American Society of Civil Engineers. There's a lot of other groups that meet, do training, and really to make an emphasis there on trenchless at those type of trainings where, you know, it's not just focused on trenchless, it's focused on a wide variety of, you know, engineering. So I think that's one area we could look to make an impact in.
And Ashley, will wrap things up here today with you.
I guess if there's a silver lining to the pandemic, it's that it's made this format so much more commonplace and accessible for people. So it's really made a lot of training opportunities more accessible to maybe smaller municipalities that don't have the funds to send people to no dig, or they're a little bit more remote. So the more local shows that are more affordable may not still be very close to them. So they have, you know, travel costs and so on. So having this ability to go right into people's offices or homes as it may be right now, I think is a great way to be able to get some of this information out there to people who might not be getting it otherwise.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you, Ashley, Eric, Tom, and Mike. You know, we really appreciate having you on and having this open discussion with you and the audience. As I mentioned at the beginning, now is the time that we're going to announce our 2021 Trenchless Technology Project of the Year award winners. I think everybody can see this slide now. So Trenchless Technology has recognized its projects of the year every year since 1993. And each year we get many projects submitted for the award, and 2021 was no different. So first off, the Trenchless Technology team would like to thank everyone who submitted projects for the 2021 Project of the Year awards. The winners are chosen based on their technical advancement, technical complexity, milestones and records achieved, interaction and cooperation, and advancement of the trenchless industry. They are selected by 2 committees of experts representing a cross-section of the industry. Again, we'd like to thank all of you who submitted outstanding projects this year, and we'll be opening up the nominations for our 2022 awards in January. So our first rehabilitation honorable mention is the Fletcher's Creek Trunk Sewer Rehabilitation. The owner was the Regional Municipality of Peel in Ontario, Canada. Project engineer was Robinson Consultants, and the contractor was Liquiforce, a granite company. Our second rehabilitation honorable mention goes to the Cottonwood Siphon Slipline Project, which was completed for the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy. Engineer was Dewberry, and the contractor was Underground Infrastructure Technologies, LLC. Our 2021 rehabilitation runner-up is the Front Street Interceptor Cleaning City of Memphis SARP-10 program for the City of Memphis, Tennessee. The engineer on the project was Black & Veatch, and the contractors were Compliance Envirosystems, LLC, Doach Environmental Services, and Cambridge Construction Management. And with the 2021 Trenchless Technology Project of the Year for rehabilitation goes to the MESS, Emergency Gas System Repair in South Orange, New Jersey. The project owner is Public Service Electric and Gas, PSE&G, and the engineer on the project was PSE&G and George Regula. The contractor on this project is Progressive Pipeline Management, with subcontracting work done by Camden Group, A&W Maintenance, Miller Pipeline, and ULC Robotics. Suppliers and manufacturers involved in this project include Avanti International, Warren Environmental, Carl Weiss GmbH, and Weco Seal. Now we move on to our new installation projects. Our new installation honorable mention goes to the Sunoco Mariner East 2 Spread 6 Trenchless Crossings for Sunoco and Energy Transfer. The engineer was Tetra Tech Rooney, and the contractor was Michaels Corp. The second new installation honorable mention goes to the City of Fort Lauderdale, using 17 horizontal directional drillings to upgrade 7 miles of large diameter HDPE force main. The engineer on the project was Hazen and Sawyer. Designer of the north section was Chen Moore and Associates. Designer of the south section was AMP Consulting, Transportation Engineers, and Craven Thompson Associates. The north section contractors were Murphy Pipeline Contractors and DBE Utility Services. South section contractors were David Mancini and Sons, Inc. and Centerline Directional Drilling. Manufacturers and suppliers involved in the project include JM Eagle and Agro America for the HDPE pipe, and the HDPE pipe distributors were Consolidated Pipe and Ferguson Waterworks. Our 2021 new installation runner-up project is the YDSS Force Main Twinning Project for the Regional Municipality of York in Ontario, Canada. Engineer on this project was GHD, and the contractor was Warden Burke. And the 2021 Trenchless Technology Project of the Year for new installation is the Line 1021 Grace Point to Rappahannock Station Project, Rappahannock River Crossing. The owner is Dominion Energy, Virginia. The EPC contractor on the project was Mears Group, Inc., and the engineers were Brierley Associates, Power Engineers, and Verified Engineering. The prime contractor was Mears Group, Inc., the electric contractor was UTEC, and the marine contractor was Corman. Manufacturers and suppliers involved in the project were American Augers, Tulsa Rig Iron, ISCO, and Brownline. Again, the entire team at Trenchless Technology magazine would like to congratulate all of our 2021 Project of the Year award winners. And the winners will be formally recognized at the 2022 NASTT NODIG Show Kickoff Breakfast in Minneapolis. If you want more information on these projects, you can read the October issue of Trenchless Technology magazine. To subscribe, visit trenchlesstechnology.com/subscribe. This concludes the special World Trenchless Day edition of the Trenchless Technology webinar series. Thank you again to our presenters, Mike, Tom, Eric, and Ashley, and to all of our attendees for joining us today. This webinar will be archived at trenchlesstechnology.com/webinars if there's something you missed or would like to refer to. I'd also like to once again thank our sponsors, Applied Felts, Q's, IPEX, MaxLiner, the NASTT 2022 NODIG Show, and Underground Magnetics. As a reminder, any views or opinions presented in this webinar are solely those of the presenters and do not necessarily represent those of Benjamin Media, Inc., nor does Benjamin Media, Inc. endorse any products or methods presented. At this time, I'd like to remind everybody, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great day, and happy World Trenchless Day. Take care.